Yeah, I also, I guess this was the pitch to the philanthropist, so I don't know much more to add except to say that in my own personal experience, I, I really believe in this whole philosophy of working together, either call it networks with communities, partnerships with other organizations. There's no way that people who give or contribute can do this on your own. In terms of the technical part of it, the actual implementation of it, and I think very, very importantly, even the piece on changing old habits and attitudes. Like Jack said at the beginning, I have been to several villages in and around Pune where toilets have been implemented. And I've seen myself exactly what he said. They are used as places where cattle are kept or fodder is stored in the monsoon. One had poultry in there, but and it took a huge leap then to then change the habit. So it's not just the building of the toilet that is important. I think this has to go hand in hand, and so much more has to go hand in hand. So very much the partnership model or the network model is absolutely imperative in this particular area.
I think what I hear the panelists, one of the messages that comes out very strongly in this work in sanitation is that in this day and age, it's really important to look at not just toilets, but development as processes. And the key element, the core element, is behavioral change. So just applying technology, whether it's in water or sanitation, does not make a difference. And we hear the same stories decade after decade after decade. And the question that we need to ask ourselves is, when we know that these old ways don't work, why do they persist? And I think they persist because, as Sheila said, we get anxious to do good and we take shortcuts. And there really are no shortcuts in sustainable development in which you have human beings at the other end that need to change their behavior in a certain way for operation and maintenance, for things to last that you build, whether it's toilets or hand pumps or something else. Final word, I think one of the most interesting thing is that I think this group is probably all over 50 at least. What's kept you going all these years, whether you worked in toilets or something else? What's something in your personal life that makes you a practice that you'd like to share with everyone? And what makes you get out of bed and continue with your humor and your desire and your passion to change the world, or make it a bit better?
Oh, I was a businessman from 24 to 40. And I've started one business every year, and by the time I retire at 40, I have 16 businesses. But I realized that there's only 80 years per lifetime. And after spending 40 years, I have only 14,600 days more. And today I'm 55 now, and I have only 9,100 over days left to live. And every day is one day less. It's very urgent. You don't get it back. And if you don't do something meaningfully in your life, you just wasted. Yeah? And so it becomes so urgent that we have to do something every day about it. And being a neglected subject is very, very critical. I think the big change in India can come from engaging pop culture. We should get cricket captains or Bollywood. This will be a turning point because we have to make toilet really sexy. We have to make toilets something people really look forward to. And it's possible because everybody will agree with us. So right now, I'm tomorrow meeting a producer to make a Bollywood film complete with dance and songs, everything.
We look forward.
Anybody who knew me when I was in university can't believe the kind of person I've become. And my transformation occurred when I started working at a community center in Baikala with women who live on the pavements. And these were all women who were migrants from Bihar, who'd followed their husbands and made houses on the streets. And my understanding of myself as a feminist was completely transformed by looking at the kinds of courageous lives these women led. And it quickly transformed my own understanding of what I do as a person working in the area of welfare at that time, and how dysfunctional that process was when the politics of what works for everybody was not in place. And my excitement from 1974, I've been doing that. So my excitement in all this has been the amazing capacity of large numbers of people to work with my organization. The National Slum Dwellers Federation and Mahila Milan, which are my two partner organizations, have 750,000 members in India, in 70 cities in 9 states. And when they do innovation in one location, that is transmitted across. So the need to have a toilet that came out in 1986 by a bunch of pavement dwellers has become a national campaign in India, and is part of a global campaign that we are doing as part of Shack Dwellers International. So we see that poor people can also use globalization to produce networks that are transformative. And community leaders sit with national governments, with international organizations, and challenge them on their development models today. I don't have to do that anymore. And I hope that the next time you have this event, you give me the opportunity to bring one of the women champions to this talk. She'll make it much more humorous than you, including imitations of what happens. And last point, you're talking about Bollywood. There's a SDC and a network of organizations in Europe have got Shah Rukh Khan to be the champion of sanitation. And that campaign is going to come out in the IPL. That's what they're designing. Let's hope. Maybe we can all join and make that work even better.
I guess I'm preaching to the converted already, so I don't know whether I need to add too much more, Deepa, except to say I'm sure, like many of you, many of us have been very privileged, come from a very privileged background. I grew up in a family where it was philanthropy all the way, my parents, and in fact my parents-in-law as well, my father-in-law in particular. So it was relatively simple to work on a foundation which was very much built, even from as a child, of values of this. But I do believe, as I have worked more and more in this area, I think I was also very much into kind of projects and looking at quick change. And I don't think quick change somehow, unfortunately, happens in some of these areas. And how can we as philanthropists really work to make much more systemic change happen, much more sustainable change happen, so that even when we move out of areas, whether in education, whether in health, whether in sanitation, how can we make sure these changes are really embedded well? And I think those are not quick fixes that we can do, money aside. I think that's what we really need to focus on in our country if we really, really want to have social change happen in any particular area.
Thank you very much. Please join me in giving this inspiring group a big hand. Thank you. I thought there was no time for question and answers. There's 5 minutes. So we'll gather a few questions. Please keep them as questions. And yeah, go ahead. If you
Hi, I'm Radhika Rajan. I work with the Hemendra Kothari Group. I'm a bit confused. All the panelists were so excellent, but I'm a bit confused. It seems to be in some way that there's no, at some level, notwithstanding what Sheila said, there's no demand for these things. Otherwise, why would somebody use it for poultry? Why would somebody? So are you really meeting a demand? Are you creating a demand? That's my first question. My second question, which is actually the more serious question, is do you think this sort of widespread toilet use will remove the scourge of manual scavenging? Because I think, whilst the government claims success in the war against manual scavenging, in actual fact, it's a very prevalent and unfortunate practice still.
Yeah. I'm Akhilesh Tiwari from Sarthi Development Foundation. This is an NGO working in Uttar Pradesh with a focus on methodologies to engage the community, build the local institutions, and build their linkages with the government service providers. See, while working on the sanitation issue, what we have experienced that this sanitation is not a standalone issue. There are various issues linked with that, such as particularly in the slum areas, even if the families want to construct the toilet, they want to own it, but they are not investing because they are not having the housing rights. They don't know when they are going to move away from that place. Second thing, even the technology also.
I'm going to have you stop
Yeah.
because we have just 3 minutes. Do you have a question?
Now, the question is, how to interlink all these issues related to the toilet, whether it is housing right, water, and even the school sanitation, which has not been touched upon during the discussion. That is a very important issue which adults and girls face.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, let's return to the panel, the issue of supply and demand and manual scavenging.
There's a demand, but it's a muted demand because everybody knows they need to go to the toilet, but because you have to educate them, but in the past, the education was very rational, very heavy academic language, and that doesn't click because the human mind is motivated by vanity, by community pressure, by all this emotional stuff. This is where I'm coming from, is this adding the marketing, promotional element, aspiration to the people's life. And once that happened, and if Bollywood would do this film called Life Without Toilets and show how a family actually completely get devastated because they don't have toilets, and story in human scale, exactly make them cry, make them laugh, make them exactly understand this, then the educational value will be tremendous and the demand will happen. Demand have to happen until the toilet is as desirable as a cell phone. And if that is the case, it can be done. It's just that it's not done before because the way we think is very rational. So we have to change that.
The comment by Jairam Ramesh on mobiles and toilets has now become very famous, saying that there are more people who have mobile phones than have toilets. And the reason for that answers your question, which is that anything in India that doesn't have to do with land happens very quickly. Toilets are, and that's why I call toilets a dipstick into governance. It's not something that just happens because you want it. It has to fit into a process. And because it's slightly complicated, that problem occurs. There's also a big difference between rural and urban. That has to be understood. And to answer your question about demand, up till now, the government of Maharashtra acknowledges that it actually went, the collector or the person went there and said, इथे सगळ्यांना टॉयलेट्स बांधायला पाहिजेत. So the toilets got built because there was an allocation, but people didn't use it in that sense because it was not discussed with them. They weren't asked. All around the world this is happening. The issue of manual scavenging is a very serious one in India. As long as you don't have technology solutions that address this issue, you will have manual scavenging. And we are so pretentious and we are so shameful that we never discuss these issues. But these are important things, and unless you have movements, like right now there is a movement of scavengers in India. I don't know how many people know about it, how many people support what they want to do. They want to be transformed into managing different things. So these are all, and nobody's discussed really the whole caste angle of who gets involved in scavenging, who gets involved in cleaning toilets. How do people, even within poor communities, begin to distinguish on caste issues, to look at who's going to do maintenance. So these are complex issues, they're not simple. So I think that the important thing is if you think this is critical, then you have to immerse yourself in understanding complexity. And I think that's one of the challenges that is very important for those people who make a transition from business to development, because everything's connected to everything, and you can't just separate it and create a silver bullet.
Thank you very much. I think the question on UP and Radhika's question, both very important, that although you may want to get toilets into a school, the context within which that has to work, the actors involved, whether it's government, if there's a stakeholders. And so you've got to understand the incentives and what makes these different stakeholders work before any solution can be brought forward. And also understand the local, social, the cultural, the caste, which is so deeply embedded. Without, if you make one mistake, you may have the right technology, but it's not going to work. And so to understand and invest in how to create a demand for the supply, and at some points it flips the more and more, for exactly like cell phones or anything else, the presence of technology then creates new needs. So thank you very much again, and I'm sure you'll all be here today or at least this morning, available for conversation with all of you. Thank you.